evening. Here's Top News English newsletter starting with headlines. Syrian army troops gain new ground near Damascus. Clashes erupt on Lebanon border as al-Nusra Emir is arrested. Israeli soldiers thought captured in Gaza declared dead. And in Libya, 22 killed in Tripoli airport clashes. Welcome to details. The Syrian army has gained more ground in its fight against foreign-backed Takfiri militants near the capital Damascus amid ongoing heavy clashes between the two sides across the country. On Saturday, Syrian army troops managed to regain full control of several areas in the town of Mneha, located approximately 9 kilometers southeast of Damascus. The government forces also discovered a network of tunnels in the town, which were used by the militants to carry out terrorist attacks. Moreover, units of the Syrian army pounded militant positions in East Ghouta region on the outskirts of Damascus. Syrian army forces also killed many terrorists and destroyed their hideouts in the towns of Tel Daw, Burj Qa'i and Kafr Laha in the central province of Homs. Additionally, Syrian military forces thwarted an infiltration attempt by foreign-backed Takfiris to enter the country through its border with neighboring Lebanon. The incident occurred on Saturday when government forces opened fire on militants trying to enter Syria across Al-Jibba town in the mountainous Al-Qalamun region near Damascus. Syrian soldiers also foiled an attempt by the terrorists to attack a military post in the desert region of Palmyra, located 215 kilometers northeast of Damascus, killing and injuring a number of them. In Lebanon, the clashes prompted the Lebanese army to issue a statement pledging decisive and firm action to prevent the Syrian conflict from spilling over into Lebanon. The violence began after troops detained Imad Ahmed Jum'a in the Arsal region of eastern Lebanon by the Syrian border. The army said in a statement that it had detained Jum'a at noon, and security sources and local residents said that al-Nusra militants began to surround local army checkpoints shortly afterwards. Exchanges of fire between the Takfiri militants and troops broke out, and the militants entered the town of Arsal, storming a police post and killing 2 residents who tried to block their attack, security sources and Lebanon's national news agency said. The agency later said that 2 Lebanese soldiers were killed in attacks on checkpoints, and the army acknowledged death and injuries among its ranks, but without giving further details. In a statement, the army warned of the seriousness of the situation in Arsal, where support for the Takfiri militants across the border in Syria runs strong. The army will not allow any party to transfer the battle from Syria to Lebanon, the statement said. The army will be decisive and firm in its response, and it will not remain silent as foreigners try to turn our land into a field of crime and terrorism, murder and kidnapping. Lebanon's Prime Minister Tamam Salan condemned the Arsal assault as a flagrant attack on the Lebanese state and the Lebanese armed forces. The Lebanese government is dealing with these developments in a firm manner, he said, calling on all political forces to exercise wisdom and responsibility and to make every effort to protect Lebanon and distance it from the dangers around it. Syria's army has also launched regular air raids and shelled the area around Arsal, saying it is targeting rebels who have holed up in the mountainous region surrounding the border town. In Palestine, the Israeli military says one of its soldiers previously believed to have been captured by members of the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas in the Gaza Strip has been killed during clashes in the impoverished coastal sliver. The Israeli army announced early on Sunday that 23-year-old Second Lieutenant Hadar Goldin of the Givati Infantry Brigade was killed in battle on Friday. The Israeli Minister of Military Affairs Moshe Ya'alon personally delivered the news to the Goldin's family at their home in the town of Kafr Sabba. Ya'alon said evidence on the ground shows Goldin was killed during an Israeli operation in Gaza. Tel Aviv earlier accused Hamas of capturing the officer and intensified its attacks on the besieged Strip. The Palestinian resistance movement had, however, denied information on Goldin's whereabouts or the circumstances surrounding his disappearance. The Azz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades, the military wing of Hamas, said that the missing officer may have been killed in the Israeli bombardment. British media have reported that Goldin is cousin of Ya'alon. In Gaza, at least 10 people were killed Sunday in a fresh strike on a UN school in southern Gaza, which was sheltering Palestinians displaced by an Israeli military offensive, medics said. Gaza Emergency Services spokesman Ashraf al-Qudra said that dozens of people were wounded in the attack, which took place in the southern city of Rafah, which straddles the border with Egypt. Chris Ganes, spokesman for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees UNRWA, said that the school had been housing thousands of internally displaced people who had been forced to flee their homes by the ongoing violence in Gaza. It was the third time in 10 days that a UN school had been hit, and came 4 days after Israeli tank shells slammed into a school in the northern town of Jabalia, killing 16 in an attack furiously denounced by UN Chief Ban Ki-moon as reprehensible. In Egypt, a Hamas team arrived in Cairo Sunday for talks with Egyptian mediators on a possible truce in Gaza, an airport official and state news agency MENA said. The delegation is led by senior Hamas official Izzat al-Rashaq, the sources said. Egypt, the traditional broker in conflicts between Israel and Hamas, had invited Israeli and Palestinian negotiators to gather in Cairo to thrash out a durable truce in Gaza based on an Egyptian ceasefire proposal. Israel, however, had said it will not send anyone to the talks. Hamas has proven that it breaches any agreement reached right away, as happened 5 times in previous truces, Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister Tzahi Hanpi said. It is therefore unclear at this stage what benefit Israel might see for participating in an attempt to reach agreements based on the Egyptian initiative. Another Palestinian team, including the Palestinian Authority's spy chief Majid Faraj, arrived late Saturday for the negotiations, which are expected to start later Sunday. Representatives for Islamic Jihad are also expected in the Egyptian capital, as is U.S. Middle East envoy Frank Weinstein and the Middle East Quartet's peace envoy Tony Blair. The talks will focus on ways to end the conflict in Gaza, which has so far claimed more than 1,700 Palestinian lives and displaced up to a quarter of the territory's population. Israel eavesdropped on U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry during doomed peace talks with the Palestinians last year, German news weekly Der Spiegel reported Sunday. The article said that Israelis and at least one other secret service listened in on Kerry's conversation as he tried to mediate in a development that Der Spiegel said was likely to further strain ties between Israel and the United States. Kerry regularly spoke by telephone with high-ranking officials throughout the Middle East during the negotiations that finally collapsed earlier this year. Spiegel, which cited several sources among secret services, said that he used not only secure lines but also normal telephones with satellite connections, which were vulnerable to tapping. The government in Jerusalem used this information in the negotiations on a diplomatic solution in the Middle East, it said. Spiegel said Kerry's office and the Israeli government declined to comment on its report. In Iraq, Islamic State insurgents have captured the northern Iraqi town of Zumar and a nearby oil field after a battle with Kurdish forces who had control of the area, witnesses said on Sunday. The Islamic State of Iraq and Greater Syria, which staging a lightning advance through northern Iraq in June, had warned residents of nearby villages along the border with Syria to leave their homes, suggesting they were planning an assault, witnesses said. In Libya, a day of militia fighting for control of the international airport in Libya's capital Tripoli has killed 22 people, the interim government said on Sunday. It said that heavily armed groups have shelled civilian targets, endangering thousands of citizens and displacing hundreds of families. The 22 people were killed on Saturday alone, the latest casualties in fighting that has claimed more than 200 lives in recent weeks. The government statement said that another 72 people were wounded in Saturday's battle. The fighting Saturday came as more than three-quarters of Libya's newly elected parliament met for the first time in Tobruk, a city near the Egyptian border chosen by a prominent anti-Islamist politician signaling a swing against Islamist parties and extremist militias. However, as the lawmakers met in Tobruk, Islamist militias overran several army bases and took control of the eastern city of Benghazi, the cradle of the 2011 revolt. Their advance in the country's second city dealt a major blow to forces loyal to renegade general who had vowed to drive extremist militias out following months of violence. The meeting Saturday saw 152 lawmakers gather in Tobruk, according to the official Facebook page of Libya's House of Representatives. The presence of the many members of the parliament, all elected as independents, suggests most lawmakers are not affiliated to the Islamist factions that dominated Libya's outgoing interim parliament. The last session suffered from political infighting as well as violent attacks that saw lawmakers kidnapped and parliament itself besieged. And finally, in Ukraine, rebels fighting in the conflict in eastern Ukraine are reported to have carried out executions to prevent chaos. Igor Truz, an advisor to the pro-Russian separatist military commander Igor Strelkov and a spokesman for rebel-held territories in the Donetsk region, said that on several occasions, extrajudicial killings had been performed by shooting. As a result, our troops, the ones who have pulled out of Sloviansk, are highly disciplined, he reportedly added. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dima Younes. Good night.